we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. The policy proposal for economic crime. The penny makes no sense. Today, we will be talking about human-centered capitalism, about legalizing marijuana. This is about education. With that being said, Andrew Yang talks about community colleges as well as universities. So in this segment, we're going to talk about community colleges and vocational opportunities. He says community colleges have the potential to be the great equalizer. Their costs are low, and their students are exactly the kind of people who, who want to enter the middle class. Many students are balancing their studies with full-time jobs. We should invest in our community colleges to make attending them cost-free, or nearly so, as an elevator to the middle class. So making community colleges affordable for all. Some background on this particular issue or this topic, because I too attended a community college before I decided to join the military. And so when I graduated from high school, instead of just running off away to the military or going to another state to a college that had a program that I really wanted to be a part of, I decided to stay home, close to the parents and everything, because I had two older brothers that had already left and had been going overseas for some time. And so I said, hey, you know what? Let me stay around home. Let me do some things that I want to do here before, and then give it an opportunity to decide if I want to dash off, to another state. Because a lot of people that I've talked to along the way, they talk about their college experience, but they do speak of how challenging that first year is when you leave home. And I can understand that because I joined the military soon thereafter. So I went to Tyler Junior College, TJC Apaches there in Tyler, Texas. And this was some time ago. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And then I decided, this is not for me. And I decided to join the Air Force. And that was an exciting experience, I must say. Learned a lot, and it gave me so many opportunities to learn more skills that I use to this day. So definitely appreciate the opportunity and experiences that it afforded me. So some background about community colleges, and here's just some things that I support as well. And that's why I'm here supporting Andrew Yang in this particular proposal, along with the other over 100 proposals that he has on his website, yang2020.com. A lot of ink has been spilled over the skills gap, the space between skills those seeking work they have and those hiring want. Let me say that again. A lot of ink has been spilled over the skills gap, the space between skills those seeking work and those that the hirers want. There's a simple solution to this problem: community college. All community colleges should be funded at a level to make tuition free or nearly free for anyone, especially those who are taking vocational classes. The government can be involved, but businesses should also be encouraged to invest in their area's community colleges, both to create stronger ties to their communities and better access to this potential workforce. What are the problems that Andrew Yang is trying to solve here? One, there's a skills gap between skills needed for open positions and skills possessed by those who are looking for work. The second thing he says is community colleges, though cheaper than other options, still present significant expenses for students trying to gain those skills. The skills basically to enter the job market. What are the goals for this particular proposal? Make vocational classes through community colleges free or nearly free. Andrew Yang says, as president, I will work to fund community colleges to a point where they can provide free or drastically reduced tuition to anyone from the community, especially those taking vocational classes. 2, expand what classes are defined as vocational classes, especially in IT and computer science fields. 3, work to create tax incentives for businesses who invest in their local community colleges and provide co-working opportunities. These are some of the advantages of bringing Andrew Yang into office, but at the same time, creating programs for your local community where small businesses and companies can get involved in helping to facilitate an avenue for the high school graduate to enter into the higher education funnel. And if they choose to go beyond that, that's great. But if they don't, at least they have skills that can be utilized right there in the local community. What Andrew Yang also proposes is promoting vocational education. So, along with the community college, let's talk about promoting vocational education. It seems we're preparing our children for college earlier and earlier. College readiness is a driving force behind many educational decisions in this country. This has resulted in only 6% of American high school students being enrolled in a vocational program. That was in 2013. Whereas comparable European nations have numbers closer to 50%. For those that do start college, graduating is not necessarily a sure thing. 6 years after first enrolling, fewer than 60% of students have attained a degree. If you look at only open admission schools, the number drops to 32%. That represents a huge investment of money and time on the part of Americans that doesn't lead them to positive outcomes in reference to education. On the other side, the underemployment rate of recent college grads is approaching 44%, and one-third end up in jobs that don't require the degree they earn. College is being overprescribed in this country. Not everyone has an interest in obtaining a college degree, and there are many jobs out there that don't require it. Georgetown has estimated that there are 30 million good-paying jobs that don't require a college degree. Most require some type of specialized training. As a country, we need to dramatically increase our investment in vocational training, providing a viable career path for those students who are more interested in starting their careers immediately after high school instead of continuing with an education they don't want but feel obligated to get. So Andrew Yang says, when talking about vocational alternatives, he says there are tens of millions of jobs that will be with us for decades that don't require a college degree. Machinist, line repair, air conditioner repair, exterminator, high-end manufacturing, and so on. We need to remove any stigma from vocational education and dramatically increase its visibility, and availability. Apprenticeships should be a big part of the future of education for millions of Americans that would give them a runway to a fulfilling livelihood. So the problems that we're attacking here are: one, too many students invest in college when it's not the right investment for them. Two, too many students are aware of alternative career paths or too few students are aware of alternative career paths or lack access to training for those paths. Three, some feel there is a stigma attached to vocational jobs. Yes, and when I was coming up, we had what we call life skills or economics, home ec that we called it, and people thought that if you were in home economics, that was kind of like wood shop, or you basically couldn't academically compete, so you had to elect to take that course. Well, the funny thing about it, they taught you how to balance a checkbook. They taught you how to actually do your taxes. Um, I mean, literally, they taught you some life skills, like literally how to handle stress. And so it's funny because back then I laughed, but now I look back and say, wow, as a career coach and strategic intervention coach, it's amazing that I use those tools now through emotional intelligence coaching as well. So it's very interesting that it was a stigma attached to it back then, but they were actually teaching things that we really needed. And to this day, 40 years later, I'm still using those skills. So goals. One of the goals, he says, is to increase vocational training options in public schools. The second is to counsel students on the right path for them based on their interests and their career goals. So what does Andrew Yang say that he will do when he becomes president to help this particular proposal? Andrew Yang says, as president, I will increase funding to vocational programs within public schools. I will also direct the Department of Education to provide materials to all public schools about career paths that don't require a college degree. Also, prioritize career paths that students express interest in rather than giving blanket advice that college is the right or only option. Then he says, begin a public education campaign championing championing vocational jobs and education. Basically, he has a motto that he sums this up with: I work with my hands, and it's awesome. So Andrew Yang, you know how he is, and you can hear him, when he says things like that. If you listen to his uh, when he was in the climate survey um, debate, and they were talking on CNN, they were talking about his basically response to climate change and electric cars and so on and so forth. That right there, you could kind of hear the way he said that when Wolf Blitzer asked him the question about electric cars, will everybody have to, or will you force everybody to drive electric cars? And he says, no, people will want to because it's fun. People will want to because they like them. It's fun. And so when he says, I work with my hands and it's awesome, that's Andrew Yang. This he's not, he don't take himself too serious, but he has serious programs because he's a thinker, he understands the data, and he wants to take this country forward. And with humanity first as the theme of his particular campaign, this is just another direct approach to solidifying his commitment to humanity first, humans first. He wants us to succeed. And if we succeed in this particular nation under his guidance, then the world succeeds. Well, I thank you for taking the time to be a part of the Andrew Yang Policy Series that is hosted by myself, Rashid Hill. And I hope that each and every one of you, if you have friends or family that don't know Andrew Yang or haven't heard of Andrew Yang, please forward this information to them. I'm a human, I'm a normal person, and I'm just expressing my commitment and my belief in his campaign, knowing that he is the right person that can stand toe to toe and defeat the incumbent in the presidency that we currently have. We have to clear out the incumbent that's in office in order for our nation to move forward, in order for us to not be in the darkness of the international community. We must have a better option. And Andrew Yang is here to fill that void. He is a serious candidate. And one thing I'm going to leave you with before I go is I was listening to him today. And if you heard, yeah, I mean, if you follow Andrew Yang, he has some really good sound bites, and he's very consistent in what he says. And when you ask him a question, if you are a Chuck Todd or whatever the guy's name is on CNN, or if you were um, what was the other guy? Rachel Maddow. They ask these questions about the impeachment. They ask these questions about white nationalists. And Andrew Yang is very consistent with his answers. If you listen to every single time he was asked a question, you'll hear the same answer every single time. To me, that's so powerful. He's not going to be shaken. And so think about that. If that's your president and he's dealing with Turkey, or he's dealing with Iran, if he's dealing with Iraq, if he's dealing with Syria, if he's dealing with Israel, whoever he's dealing with, that is the person that you want sitting across from those international leaders. And I don't get into it much, but China is still one of the up and coming, dominating countries around the globe. And we're going to need somebody that understands that particular methodology and can um, put us in step with what they're doing, so we can strategize and take back our leading position in the world, but do it in a way that's ethical and makes sense for everybody. So yes, this has been part 2 of the education series, talking about reducing debt. We talk a little bit about the historically black colleges and universities. We also talked about promoting vocational training as well as community colleges and supporting them to a point where it becomes something that you like, something that you would consider awesome, because going to a four-year college is not for everybody, and the cost associated with it is not worth it if that's not really what your path or what you're called to do from an educational or career perspective. So options are there. And so I would recommend that you take a look at yang2020.com, get more information, get more familiar with what Andrew Yang is proposing, and then you'll know why he is our next president to run this country in the best way. Ethically, passionately, for the people. Humanity first, Andrew Yang 2020. Let's do this. But I definitely want you to come back, take a look at my next video. We're going to talk a little bit about increasing salaries for teachers and some other educational proposals that Andrew Yang has on his website, yang2020.com. I'm your host, I'm Rashid Hill, and I hope you're enjoying the Andrew Yang policy series that I feel is my commitment to his campaign and spreading the good of what he has proposed for our nation. Wow. Let's see what Andrew Yang has to say about this.
Well, I mean, there's a corporate the corporate tax rate's not right. Well, the corporate tax rate's not zero. I mean, they're playing a lot of games to make it zero. And Amazon's employing a lot of people, but it's also closing 30% of America's stores and malls. And think about how many people work in those stores and malls. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of Americans. Right. And so if Amazon's trumpeting, it's like, hey, look, our fulfillment center employs 10,000 people. Oh, yeah, it does. But the malls that you closed employed 100,000 people, and then the 10,000 people in your fulfillment center are supplemented by 10,000 robots, which will then become 20,000, and then your 10,000 will shrink to 5,000. You know, so this is all what's happening in the real world. We have a massive revenue problem where if you have $1 trillion tech company like Amazon paying zero, then of course you're going to look around being like, well, you know, how do we pay for stuff?